We're going to own it, we're going to find it, and we're going to fix it.
And nobody's going to get fired. That's Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg talking about the most recent FAA screw-up. For the first time since 9/11, the FAA grounded every flight at every American airport and every flight headed to the United States from international airports. It's called a full ground stop. It wasn't because of a terrorist attack or a threat of a terrorist attack, but rather an FAA system error, and it's not the first one of the year. The issue today caused at least 9,000 delays, 1,200 cancellations. Last week, a radar outage in Miami led to 8,500 delays and 770 cancellations. Over the July 4th weekend, airlines delayed 14,000 flights and canceled 1,400 more because of staffing issues at the FAA Jacksonville Center. These are all FAA screw-ups. This is not about the weather or about anything other than the FAA. It is not about the airlines. And now the same government officials who can't wait to fine airlines, and Southwest in particular, when they mess up, are the cause of a massive failure that disrupted travel nationwide. The FAA, of course, isn't the only government agency letting us down while fining and holding private businesses to account. We've talked ad nauseum about the shortcomings at the FDA, the same agency that messed up the baby formula shortage, monkeypox testing and vaccines, keeping kids safe from nicotine, and shortages of children's Tylenol. I could go on, but we'll get to the Washington Post editorial board who wants to break up the agency. From their article, the FDA's current food safety operations are underfunded, understaffed, and lack a coherent leadership chain that can act swiftly in a crisis. We've seen that. Heather Long is part of the Post editorial board and with us now. Heather, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Is this an issue of the way the FDA is constructed or a leadership issue?
Well, you could argue it's both. I mean, you've just outlined a number of crises on both the drug side and the food side at this agency. You could also add that they have had 7 different leaders in the past 7 years. I don't know any organization that can survive that level of churn at the top and still function well. But at the end of the day, I think one of the main problems, and this has been true for basically a decade, is it's not clear when there's a crisis, one of these food outbreaks, whether it's peanut butter or lettuce or onions or the baby formula catastrophe last year, which is still ongoing, by the way, who do you call? There's multiple different parts of the FDA that are supposed to be overseeing the food supply. They often don't talk to each other. And there's no sort of single one head of food safety in the United States, except the FDA commissioner, who, by the way, was also overseeing monkeypox, as you were describing, and the COVID vaccine.
He's got a lot on his plate, but that's his job. He accepted the job. You know, there's a lot of times that when somebody's in charge of something that fails, either they get fired or they resign. They don't just keep sort of, bumbling along and get multiple chances over and over and over again. And I'm wondering, what has happened in government agencies that are supposed to hold the private sector accountable that really aren't ever held accountable themselves?
I think it's a fair question. And obviously, Congress and both parties have been asking that about the FDA, and maybe they'll start doing it with the FAA. What I was struck by, as you tried to connect these, is both of these agencies have super outdated computing systems. So you think that they're able to have as much data as an Amazon or a Google or name your favorite tech company. And in fact, in many cases, they're operating with decades-old technology. Now, why didn't it get modernized? I think that's a fair question to ask through both Republican and Democratic administrations, but we shouldn't be sitting here in the year 2023 operating on outdated computer systems.
Right.
And that is certainly part of the problem.
Right. No, it is part of the problem. And, you think about the FAA radar systems that still, some of the FAA technology still uses floppy disks, like the ones that, we played computer games on. You're younger than I am, so you may not remember floppies, but they were a thing way back. They were, about this big. Okay. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.